start with one thing. Don't try to do it. Sometimes let's say we read a book and then the book has 10 ideas and we're like, oh my God, I need to start them all at once. I want to implement them yesterday. That doesn't work. It's too much change into our daily routine that we cannot handle because it requires a lot of energy in the beginning to put it in, and our brain doesn't like it, right? So it will resist. It might do it for a week and then we fall off the wagon, right? So I would say start the smallest and the simplest possible.
Welcome to another episode of the Leading to Fulfillment podcast, where everything we talk about is meant to encourage people-first leaders, empower individuals to achieve fulfillment, and help your organizations become places people love to work. I'm your host, James Laws, and I have a great show in store for you. My guest this episode is Maggie Perotin. Maggie holds an executive MBA from Jack Welch Management Institute, has over 14 years experience in various corporate leadership positions, and as an international business and leadership coach, Maggie helps service-based entrepreneurs make the income they want in their businesses and become understanding leaders in the process. Through her Dream, Plan, Do coaching model, she supports her clients in becoming confident CEOs by aligning their mindset, business skills, and high-performance habits. This allows them to transform their businesses from an unreliable source of income to a client-attracting diamond. In my conversation with Maggie, some of the things that we discussed was how to discover your own personal core values and why they matter, her Dream, Plan, Do model, creating solid habits that reinforce your goals, combining some of the barriers of progress, and navigating failure and turning it into success. If you enjoy this episode, I want to encourage you to subscribe to the Leading to Fulfillment podcast in your favorite podcast tool. We're on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere else podcasts can be found. And if not, let me know so I can correct that. Also, don't forget to check out circles.com. That's circles with 2 I's, and subscribe to our newsletter. There, we'll let you know when each new episode drops, as well as send you original and curated content on leadership, managing teams, and finding fulfillment. Another way you can help us promote the show is by simply giving us a review wherever you listen to the show. And now, here is my conversation with Maggie Perotin. Maggie, thank you so much for joining me on the Leadership to Fulfillment podcast. I really appreciate you being on.
Well, thank you, James, for having me. I appreciate you having me as well. So,
Absolutely. As we were talking, kind of pre-show, and as I was looking over some of your background, you had you define yourself as an international business and leadership coach. Yeah. For those who might not know exactly what it is that you do or what somebody with that kind of role does, why don't you give a little bit of background for our listeners of the type of work that you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yes. So on a day-to-day basis, I help service-based entrepreneurs grow their businesses. And why I emphasize that I'm not only a business coach, but also a leadership coach, because I truly believe that anybody who is in position of leading their business, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you have employees, you need to embrace that you are the leader of your business. You might not have a title of a CEO or whatever. You might consider yourself a founder or owner, but you still lead a business. And in order to do that, you need to lead yourself first. I truly believe in leading by example and growing yourself the way you think about the business, your skills, and so on, in order to make better decisions for your business. So that's what I do. I help my clients grow their businesses, and at the same time, become high-performing CEOs in the process.
I love that idea of kind of leading yourself first. I try to impart that into the leaders in my company, that before you can lead others, you have to first be able to lead yourself. What are some of the things where do you start when you get into a relationship with a client who's looking at managing their business, perhaps growing it, perhaps taking on team members? Mm-hmm. What are some of the tips and suggestions you walk through with them to help them be better leaders of themselves? What are your thoughts on that?
So we really start first, of course, to help my client, I need to understand them, but that leads to them understanding themselves better. So what I mean by that is we look at, okay, what are your values? How do you operate as a person, as a human being? That because that, what do we as how do you say? You say the way we do one thing is the way we do everything, right? So
Yeah.
how do I operate on a daily basis? What's important to me that I bring to my business? And some of it might be unintentional, but you want it to be intentional, right? So you want to bring certain core values that you live by anyways into your business, because that creates a foundation for how you deal with the clients, the culture down the line when you're having employees and so on, right? From that, we think about, or we make sure that you're clear on your mission and the vision for your business. So many businesses, they don't even know what it is, or even if they did think about it sometime, then they put it on the shelf and it's just collecting dust and we never look at it and so on. But then they might be surprised, okay, why are we not meeting our goals? Or why are we having clients we don't really want? Or why are we having employees that are not really aligned with who we are, right? And it all comes from either not having that clarity of what we're all about as a business, how we're helping people, who are we helping, and so on. Or maybe we have done that, but things change and we didn't even we're not really aligning our actions and our goals with it. So I would say that's the first thing. Let's understand who you are, what you stand for, what's your mission, what's your vision. And then, of course, I understand where they are in their business and where they want to go. And then we kind of, create a plan to get there.
Absolutely. I love the idea. We talk so much and we do this in businesses all the time, whether it be in the small business or the corporate world, where we will develop, a true purpose statement, mission statement, and core values. Mm-hmm. And I love that you brought that out from, even as an individual leader or solopreneur, is digging down and saying, hey, personally, what are my core values? What do I stand for? What am I bringing into even my solo service business? What am I bringing into that? And it's something that I don't think individually we do enough. We spend a lot of time talking about it as an organization. That, oh, my company stands for, these things. These are our core values. But as a person, spending a little time to really get to know ourselves and say, what do I value deeply? And with that in mind, what are your core values?
So micro values that I brought into my business, because, I would say, okay, one of them is family, but family is very personal. But the three that I brought into my business, the first one was simplicity. I truly believe that life can be as simple as we want it, and it's not complicated. It's just as humans, we make it complicated. And that's something I lived by all my life. And I brought that into my business, not only for me, but also for my clients, right? Because sometimes we get so overwhelmed by everything we think we need to do, or we think that the problems are complex. But when you start breaking things down and coming back to basics, then you realize that things are not as complicated as you think they are, and then there are simple solutions to them, right? So that's number one. The second one was excellence and not perfection, right? So excellence meaning I'm doing the best I can with the resources that I have and the knowledge that I have. And once I know better, then I will improve. Excellence is really propels growth and continuous improvement. When we are stuck on perfection and not avoiding, we're trying to avoid mistakes, we're not growing. And some of it, sometimes a lot of people are perfectionists and that comes out in their business, but also organization. Again, I come from the corporate world, and sometimes that trying to pretend that we can be perfect in front of the clients and committing to 100% KPIs and things that just doesn't happen, especially if you're in service business and you rely on human beings to deliver those services. It's just unreasonable, right? And we need to, for me, normalize the fact that as humans, we're not perfect. Yes, we can be amazing and we can be really 99.9% sometimes with help of technology and so on, deliver things, but it will never be 100% all the time, right? And then the third one is courage. And courage comes from the fact that especially as entrepreneurs, we really need to go out a lot out of our comfort zone, right? It's just like the growth you need to go through. But even larger companies, if you don't grow, you kind of die, right? So it takes courage. And again, it was for me to remember that I have it as well, like I've made a bunch of sometimes critical decisions in my life that required courage, but sometimes on day to day, you tend to forget that. Like you're like, I'm scared of that. But wait, like I've done some crazy stuff in my life. So that means I can do this little thing, right? So it's the same. It's to remind me and remind my clients that sometimes, taking a risk and evaluating it, but believing in the possibility of the goals that they want to do and having courage to go after them, and that they have it in them, right? That they can take those steps and so on. So those are the three that I brought over.
I love those, and one of the things that I love, and one of the things I teach when I teach people as they're developing their core values, is that idea of keep them minimal, like keep them as few as possible to really capture the core and essence of who you are. And one, it helps them be memorable, helps you kind of remember what they are, so you can always check against them. Yeah. But it actually keeps you focused. It doesn't, having, you see these companies, and I don't know of any individuals who have done this, but you see companies that have like 20 core values. Yeah. And it's like, there's no way you're keeping track of any of that. Like, come on. Like, I went, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just say I worked at a credit union that had that many, many years ago, that had all those values, and they actually required everyone to memorize them, and it was almost impossible. Like it was just out of control.
Yeah. And sorry, what I wanted to add is that, like, if everything is important, then nothing is, right? As Absolutely. Somebody said, and it's there is certain, like, yes, I understand that, like, people thinking integrity, honesty, and all that, it's a core value. But for me, that's like just an entry level. Like, to be in business, you should have integrity and you should be honest, right? So you don't necessarily need to bring that, because for me, like, not being dishonest, you should be out of business, maybe in jail, but not in business, right? So there is sometimes like this fear, if we don't include that, that means people won't follow it. No, it's not about that, right? It's about, as you say, like, just defining who we are, and then through that, remembering and aligning our actions with it.
Absolutely. We call those, a lot of times I call those table stakes, right? It's like, in order to be a decent human being in business, integrity has to follow, honesty has to follow. Like those are, of course, those are there. And we should, I would hope that by assuming the best, we assume that those things are there. Exactly. But I want to know what makes up you that's different. Yes. You have three core values that I can tell are meaningful to you. How do you coach your clients to wrestle with their core values and bring out what might be their core values? Because my guess is the process is, when you go into that, and having gone through it myself several times with businesses and individually, is it can sometimes be hard to narrow that down and find out, like, what is my essence? What is at the essence of my core? How do you help your clients do that?
So at first, I get them to brainstorm, to write everything what's important to them, right? All the values, whether I give them sometimes a list, that's available out there. Actually, Brené Brown has a list in her book, Dare to Lead, which is like a great resource, just to start brainstorming. And then we start going, okay, well, sometimes you can categorize, right? Certain values fall into the same bucket, right? So then when you start categorizing and certain bucket, then you can narrow it down. So you have 12, okay, let's get 4 out, and let's narrow it down maybe to 6, right? And then even narrow it down to 3, or, no more than 5. So that's that process of, let's just put everything out there, see what kind of buckets are there, start dialing back into, what makes sense also to bring into business, because there's certain personal values that are really mostly in personal life. So they might not be as relevant in the business. What makes sense to bring into business, and just by the method of elimination and kind of categorizing, we go down to whatever, 3 or 5.
Awesome. I love it. And I encourage people to go through that process if you've never gone through as an individual to determine like what are your core values. So it's a really fun exercise actually to think through what is important, what do I value, and once you solidify that, once you write that down, once you memorialize that to some level, it does start to change the way you make decisions. You wouldn't think that it would, but it does actually start to impact your decisions because now you've actually like put it down on paper. You've actually memorialized it. It's harder now to make a decision that would oppose those things that you have identified. Do you find that to be true as you're coaching your clients?
Yes, it is. And I always tell my clients, because sometimes they say, okay, well, why am I doing that? I say to them, every time you're in the crossroad and you're making decision in your business and you're not sure where to go back to your values, go back to your mission and look at that, right? Because sometimes actually in the beginning, when you grow your business, it might seem like it's actually harder to grow it and there's not enough opportunities. But when you get past that hump, there's actually more opportunities usual than you can take on. And being able to pick the right opportunities for you, the one that will really strategically fit for you, like the values, mission, and vision are perfect filters through that, right? Absolutely. And if you have them, if you establish them and you truly identify with them, again, not something I put on a wall and I don't believe in and nobody looks at it, but something that I'm really connected to, then making those decisions and picking the right opportunities and saying no to the ones that don't align is so much easier.
Absolutely. So it sounds like as you're working with various clients, a big part of what you're doing is kind of helping them carve a path towards ultimately fulfillment for them in their business, personally.
Yes.
You spent 13 years in corporate leadership roles and then decided to make that very change for yourself.
Yes.
What caused that change? Because you look at the corporate world and it's funny. And there's a lot of social media platforms and people out there talking about the benefits of kind of tying yourself into the corporate world. And surely there is plenty to be learned in that environment. But you made the conscientious shift to leave the corporate world and go out on your own and do something that ultimately I believe was more fulfilling for you. What was the catalyst of making such a fairly dramatic change after you've done it for 13 years?
So, you know what? The catalyst was definitely, or the moment that really pushed me to think deep about it was my burnt out. So about 4 years ago now, at that time, I was already thinking like, where do I want to take my career? But it was more still thinking in terms of like corporate career, but I just want to do more of what I love, right? And stop doing things that I might be good at, but they're not bringing me fulfillment and I'd rather causing stress and so on. But about 4 years ago, I went through I call it situational burnout. It wasn't systemic. It was just a situation in a role that I was where we were just put a lot of work onto our plates on top of our full-time jobs without support. We were not ready to deliver things that were promised to the clients. And I found myself working, I don't know, it was a few months, nonstop, no breaks, no weekends, no nothing. My kids were little. And one of my personal values is I value balance, right? I'm a mom. I want to spend time with my kids, but I also value my professional fulfillment, right? I feel fulfilled when I have both, right? That's me. And I found myself sort of cornered in that situation that got me thinking is, well, you didn't have control over that decision. So that was one. And I'm a Sagittarius. I like to be free, right? So it's like, you see them, maybe some better ways of having made that decision and you couldn't control it. And then you found yourself on the delivery side of it. And I didn't like that. And, the more senior you become, you like to make decisions, right? Like maybe when I was junior, I wasn't ready for that. But as more of a senior leader, I'm like, I like to make my decisions and then implement them in this and so on. And so then I started thinking, no, I needed that balance. I'm like, I can't do it like that. I have to have balance between my family and work. And balance, I don't mean like perfect amount of hours every day that I'm spending with my family and so on, but balance in whatever terms that means to me. So what am I going to do? And then the thought was, well, going in a corporate, that situation can happen again. And whether it's in this company or in the other one, it doesn't matter, right? I'll have somebody over me or certain levels that will make decisions without necessarily consulting. And then I'll end up not me only delivering that, but also my team and so on, right? So then the thought was, no, so what are you going to do next? Like, okay, you don't want to grow in the corporate career anymore. And my thought process was, I really love coaching and developing people, like being a people leader. That was my favorite part of any role that I had. And then, as you say, I actually like business, and business is fun, and it can be fulfilling when we remember that we're humans and we're doing it not just for money, but for other things as well. And when we are realistic, yes, bold, but realistic, and we can be proactive about things, we don't always need to react. So that, by taking that skills and my passion, led to me creating, my business coaching practice.
I love it. In that process, you actually talk a little bit about a model that you use in your coaching practice called Dream Plan Do.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about what that model is, what makes up that model, and where that came from?
Yeah, so the model came from, I think it's just like I operate this way. And then as I was as I was growing my business and starting creating concepts for my clients, it's just the naming convention came, where dream is part of course, everything starts in our mind, right? An idea and thought, whatever project. So that's the dream part. And then the important key to that part is believing that we can be successful in whatever idea we have. Now, it doesn't mean being dangerously optimistic when you're not considering risks and so on. Yes, you do that in the planning part, but you're making decisions based on the fact that you believe in the probability of your dream, your idea being successful, and you're moving forward towards. Now, the planning part is something that a lot of people skip, and especially entrepreneurs. They're just like, I have an idea, let's go and implement it, right? And that's where you create a lot of unnecessary hurdles in front of you. It could take you longer. You're wasting sometimes money as well, because planning, and I call it like creative part of business. This is where you actually solve for certain problems that, as an intelligent human beings, you can predict. Your brain is capable of doing that. And what is creativity? It's really solutioning, right? It's the same part. Like, yes, artists are creative in painting, but we in business, we're creative in creating solution. But our brain that part of the brain can only function when it has time and space to do it. We can't move from tactics to strategy, It's impossible. We need to create that container, and that's the planning. And it doesn't have to be 5 days every time you have an idea, right? It can be a 30 minutes, it can be an hour. But thinking about, how can I implement it? What's the best route to go? What could happen, and how can I prepare for it, right? It's not about me stopping because I'm catastrophizing and thinking, oh my God, that's not going to work. But okay, if that happens, okay, let me prepare, right? And then I do, and then I execute. And it's so much less stressful. It saves so much time. Again, it doesn't mean unexpected things won't happen, but it's so much easier to deal with them when you went through that planning process.
I love the planning process too, because I talked about this in the previous episode, and I wrote about this on our website. I talk about the idea of the power of boredom. And I use the term boredom because like you said, right, we can't just, our minds have to be in a certain state in order to work through that process of creating solutions. And I think boredom to me is that perfect state of, I'm sitting down with nothing, no agenda, no tasks on my list, and I'm just going to sit and let the thoughts kind of come at me. And because I am who I am and I work in the capacity that I work in, I will find myself solutioning and solving problems and ideating around ideas because I let myself have that space
Yes.
to just be bored, even if it's I have to put it on my calendar for an hour a day
Yes.
or whatever the case
Yes.
may be. So I love that planning stage. What are some tips and some ideas that you encourage your clients to help develop that planning stage in their own schedules?
So, as you say, definitely creating that space, even if you need to put it on your calendar, right? And everybody's different. Maybe it's an hour a week, a day, or maybe it's just two chunks of time during a week or once a week. That I do give my clients a journal. That's a dream planner journal that helps them create a plan, not only for like a month or a quarter, but also weekly. This is more tactical, but still it's that one of, high performance habits that allows you to go through a week, again, not overwhelmed and so on, but just execute what you planned. So that helps them too. And then I help them create good habits. So it's just not about, you need to, me telling them, okay, you need to put it in the calendar, but they're like, I have meetings and I have this and that doesn't work and so on. It's us working through that and actually creating, changing their mindset, but creating little habits that allows them to put that space into their, weekly operations. Let's just call it.
Well, you speak about the power of good habits, right? Mm-hmm. Putting in some habits in place. What are some of the best ways leaders can stack those habits, can start to put those habits in place and make that a functional part of their day?
Yeah. So start with one thing. Don't try to do it. Sometimes let's say we read a book and then the book has 10 ideas and we're like, oh my God, I need to start them all at once. I want to implement them yesterday. That doesn't work. It's too much change into our daily routine that we cannot handle because it requires, a lot of energy in the beginning to put it in, and our brain doesn't like it, right? So it will resist. It might do it for a week and then we fall off the wagon, right? So I would say start the smallest and the simplest possible. So let's just say you decided, I do want to create that boredom space, the creative space in my week. And, you read a book and they say, 4 hours a week, you should do that. And you're like, what am I going to, that's not possible. Start with an hour a week, right? Start with which day is the easiest for you to be able to keep that. Maybe it's a Friday afternoon. Maybe on Friday afternoons, you sort of slow down and so on. It might be first thing Monday morning, when people are just like over the weekend and emails are not flowing yet and so on, right? So in your current schedule, what is the easiest time that you could schedule that minimum, let's say 1 hour a week, and start there? And as you do it for a certain amount of time, then it just becomes natural. It becomes part of your who you are, daily operation, and only then expand, only then add something else, right? And I would say that it's a journey. It's not like once and done thing, or I can pile a bunch of stuff at once and do it. It is a journey, but it's worth it, I have to say.
That's something that, I take from being in the technology space. When in development, one of the things that we always talk about is the idea of small iterations, small micro improvements towards a better product, and habits fall really well into that environment, right? And I teach that to others as well, as when you're developing new habits, try to break it down to the smallest possible piece and get that so solid and in place. And then stack something a little bit harder. So if you're, for instance, for your health, if you're trying to stop drinking soft drinks, for instance, don't just stop drinking soft drinks. How about start drinking at least 1 glass of water a day?
Yeah.
Still drink the soft drinks, but just drink 1 glass of water a day. And then eventually you can transition that to drinking only water or whatever the next stage is that. So you can build little increments and build up to that. So I love that. And it speaks to actually what I was thinking about, which is the next kind of line of thought I have, is that we believe that in order for professionals to find fulfillment, in order for our team members to find fulfillment, they ultimately need purpose, passion, and progress, right? They need to experience these types of things in their everyday. So they have to believe that the work that they do matters. Yes. They have to love what they do, and they have to actually see the impact of their work happening, throughout that process. What do you think with the clients that you've spoken to, what do you think are some of the things that hold these individuals, leaders, from creating or seeing progress in their day-to-day work? What are some of the barriers that they may have, bad habits or not, that create this seemingly lack of progress?
So definitely bad habits is one of them, right? So just being in certain motion and not necessarily, and it starts really with the mindset, not necessarily believing that something else will work, right? And that's natural for our brain to dismiss certain new ideas and so on, just because, again, change requires effort and change requires energy and so on. So definitely the mindset of, this can work, and then this can work, and I can make it happen by taking the smallest steps possible. I don't need to do it all at once and so on. And sometimes fears, right? So again, it comes to the thing, do I believe I can be successful? Sometimes the fears are settling in, right? The fear of failure, the fear of whatever else, of judgment or shame or whatever. And so the bad habits one, and then also the fact that depending on what they are, but what I find that like the lack of understanding that when you're a business owner, you do need to grow yourself as a CEO in your business, right? So it's not just about you improving your product or getting more expertise in the way you service your clients if you're a service-based owner. That's necessary too, don't get me wrong, but you need to equally invest in yourself as a leader of your business and CEO, right? Like I just had a conversation not that long ago with a lady who was telling me that she was running her business for 3 years and it kind of stagnated, right? And she lost a bit of confidence. She didn't believe it could work. But when I started like pinpointing where the problem was, it was that I was saying like you never really notice that it's important for you to understand marketing and understand strategy, understand a bit of finance and so on, because you're the leader. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be a CPA. You don't need to be a marketing strategist, the best person in the world, but you need to have some information, some knowledge. So you understand. Through your understanding in your business, you know how that business shows up and you direct the way it shows up to your clients and so on. So then when you actually grow it to the point where you can outsource, right? You can direct the people who are doing the work and understand if they're portraying your business properly or not, right? So sometimes that's a big blockage. People either don't do it at all and then the business stagnates, or they do it a little bit but then they burnt out. They are not able to scale because they are not running it strategically, and just because again they're not seeing the importance of investing in them, in their business skills, in their leadership mindset and things like that. So that's one of them too.
Another part of that progress, you talked about it when you're talking about Dream Plan Do. You talk about this belief, right? Yeah. The belief that you can do this, that this thing can be accomplished, that you can do this. And yet we know, no matter how much we believe, sometimes you talked about the fear of failure. Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes that fear comes true. Failure does happen. In fact, I would say if you're going to do anything risky, failure is probably inevitable.
Yes.
You are going to fall on your face a couple of times, right? How do you help people navigate failure gracefully and turn that failure into a success? I am of the opinion that no failure is a waste if you can learn and gather something from it. So how do you help your clients learn from perhaps what may feel like a catastrophic failure or a stumble?
By first of all, again, changing mindset around failure, that first of all, detaching failure from them as a person. Failure doesn't mean anything about you as a human being. It's part of the process. As you say, there's no successful business in this world that didn't go through multiple failures and learn from it to be successful, right? So first, decouple the failures that happen, or even the positive results, because if we attach our worth to the amount of money we make, that's not healthy either, right? So decouple that from the person. Then, as you say, just acknowledge that it's just part of the journey. It will happen, no matter how much you plan and so on. Now, you can save yourself some of it by planning, but it will happen. And then, how can I make it so valuable just by learning, right? So what did I learn from it? What worked in this? What didn't work? Why it didn't work? And how can I improve next time? Because the only way failure becomes detrimental is if we make the same mistakes over and over, right? But if we learn and grow and make different mistakes at a different level because we grew, that just means that we're going in the right direction, truly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I constantly tell my team, right? I expect you to fail. The lesson should be don't fail twice at the same thing. Learn from that mistake and learn from it. Maggie, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope people really listen to, especially to that last portion of decoupling the failure from their identity and separating that and recognizing, like, listen, failure is going to happen. And that doesn't mean that you are a failure. It doesn't mean that you are the problem. It just means there's a lesson to be learned. And if you take the time to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and analyze the situation, you can actually turn that failure into a massive amount of success moving forward in the future. And that is how we make progress. And I really appreciate you being on the show and sharing some of your wisdom with us today. If people want to get in touch with you or learn more about what you do, or even acquire on your services that you provide to your clients, how can they do that?
The best way to find me is through my website. It's stairwaytoleadership.com. So stairwaytoleadership as one word.com, or LinkedIn under Maggie Perotin, Perotin, through my profile there as well.
Awesome. Well, I hope everyone will check it out. You check out your website. You have some great content on there as well, some blogs that they can learn. I know you do some various coaching and courses, both free and to your clients. So I hope they will check all that out. Maggie, again, thank you so much for being on the Leading to Fulfillment podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, James. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Maggie Perotin for joining me on this episode. It was a real pleasure getting to have this conversation with her. Everything we mentioned, including the full transcript of the show, is available over on our website, and you can access it anytime by visiting leadingtofulfillment.com/008. One of the biggest things we have to learn if we want to lead ourselves well is how to have a healthy relationship with failure. Failure isn't something to be sought after, but it shouldn't be something you fear either. Failure should be seen as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to expand your understanding, to grow in knowledge and in character. We do this by examining our preconceptions or assumptions. We do this by recognizing that our goal is not perfection. Our goal is better. And failure is a looking glass into how we can think incrementally better, how we can do incrementally better, and how we can be incrementally better. In your journey, it is inevitable that you will have to face failure. If you are a leader, it is inevitable that you will have to lead through failure. If you want to be great and do great things, you will need to learn how not to avoid or resist failure, but to embrace it as the opportunity it has the potential to be. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join me on the next episode of Leading to Fulfillment.